Real talk. I didn't put out a question request this week because I already had a couple good questions in the comments and stuff. I'm gonna get this bagel right and this coffee, and then we're gonna get into it. Welcome to Real Talk. That bagel was good. They ran out of everything bagel, so I just did a plain bagel, and it's not a New York bagel, but it was pretty good. The coffee got me popping, so I think we're ready to go. So I got a couple big comments on YouTube. I just decided to do this Real Talk Tuesday, just addressing those big comments. It's just 3 comments, and they have some questions built in there. S. Brian says, Felix, wow, those were all such great moves. I gotta ask, since you have such a great style, how did you get that steez in skating? Was it something natural or did your friends inspire it? Also, notice you skated in some dunks and Cortezes, I believe. If they were, how was it like skating in such shoes? Because I hear P-Rod would like to make a Cortez SB. Hope you have a great day, Felix. S. Brian, thank you for that. And thank you for my compliment on my style and stuff. I don't know if friends can help you with style. They could probably tell you something you're wearing is whack. Maybe to control your arm a little bit or bend at the knees more or whatever. I find it really interesting because I have kind of like a stiff, more aggressive style. That has something to do with I was born with a disability. You know, what's that movie? Oh, Forrest Gump. How Forrest Gump started running and he had those metal apparatuses on his legs, and then all of a sudden he kind of like ran them off. Well, my legs weren't fully developed when I was born, and I spent a lot of time in those things and actually sitting on the floor. So it took me a long time to even be able to stand or walk or run. So I thank God that I could even skateboard. It's a miracle that I could even skateboard, let alone run, let alone have a skateboarding style that maybe somebody might appreciate. So I really take that compliment close to heart. Thank you. And now as far as the sneakers, when I started skating, Vans was around, and that was pretty much it. I was in basketball in high school, and back then Nike used to actually promo our high school shoes. Believe it or not, Nike had to seed shoes in high schools because they were trying to get their name out there and trying to build their credit up. I would take my basketball shoes, which at the time were Blazers, and I would go skating in my Blazers, and when I would come back to basketball practice, my teacher was like, well, what's wrong with your shoes? Get this guy another pair of shoes, because my shoes were scuffed. So basketball season was amazing because I would end up with double the pair of shoes, which then after basketball season, I had 2 pairs of shoes to skate, and I used to skate vert as much as I skated the street. So my shoes were just getting trashed, knee sliding and stuff like that. I think I started skating in athletic shoes because of high school is when I started skating, and I was getting free shoes from high school. Then tennis season would roll around, and the shoes we got for free for tennis were the classics. So if you remember the classics, they were canvas and they had a rubber toe cap. So I used to have to glue on like a little patch or something so the ollie area would last longer. But I started skating in Nikes. Shortly after that, I saw in the Bones Brigade video, some people were skating in Jordans and stuff like that, but that was maybe late 80s. And in the Rhythm video, I was skating in Jordan 1s, which are probably my favorite skate shoe ever. The original Jordan 1s were so grippy on the bottom, and the ankle height was just right, and the shape was just pulled enough where it wasn't so tight of a toe that your feet hurt or are crunched, but it also wasn't so wide that you feel like you have kind of like a hovercraft on your skateboard. Other shoes that I skated in there were Air Force 1s. Air Force 1s were a little bit more difficult to skate, but whenever I had kind of like a heel bruise or my feet were feeling a little tender, I would skate in the Air Force 1s because they had the higher heel. So I had some support. If you notice, when I frontside nose slide the hubba at Belmont, I'm wearing Air Force 1s because that was kind of like a big 9-stair ledge, and I was jumping off and having to land and then jump down these 3 stairs. So I wanted the extra heel support. There was no Cortezes in there. I love the Cortezes. The Cortezes are actually too soft on the sides and real narrow underneath in the sole, and they have the cool like rib thing, which makes them incredible to walk because they're very forgiving. All those little ribs bend. So it's going to be interesting. P-Rod's going to have to change the outsole if he wants to skate it. Whoa. That was my foot. But I understand he probably skated in those when he was a little kid, because honestly, let's be straight, when you're starting up and you don't got no money, you skate in whatever you had. I was just really lucky that my skate shoes in high school were actually the cool shoes to skate in now. So my whole life I grew up skating in Nikes and all the first basketball shoes and shell toes and that kind of stuff. Thank you for that question. Now we have, am I supposed to slurp on tape? Backside Smith Fakie. First off, thank you for all that you've contributed to skateboarding. One of the originals of Technar. Whenever I hear Technar, I think of Jeff Rowley, because I never heard that term until we were hosting Street League, and he would say, Technar! And I was like, Technar? Then it kind of makes sense. It's pretty self-explanatory. Thank you for saying I'm one of the originators of Technar skating, when that was not very common. Did you get flowed by DC for a bit during the filming of this video? You always rocked proper shoes. I was hyped that you also skated in non-skate shoes at the time. That 50-50 through the knob has to be a good story. What made you realize you could do it? Last but not least, any good Ty stories from filming with him? Okay, so I'm gonna have to keep looking back at the screen to figure this one out, because there's a lot of questions built in there. But Backside Smith Fakie, thank you so much for participating. I get super excited when you guys actually play ball with me here, because this is so much better when we do it together, because it's a community, and a community isn't one person talking to himself, it's one person talking to many people who talk back to this person. I say this every episode. This is a Q&R. Some of these things I could actually answer because it's about me, but when some of the questions are about you, I'm gonna respond to them, and then you guys are gonna feel out, discover the answer within yourselves. So a Q&R is a question and response, and sometimes it generates an answer. Q&As, that's a little bit of a narcissistic thing. I can Q&A stuff about me, but I can't really Q&A you. I can respond to you though. Did you get flowed by DC for a bit during the filming of this video? Interesting story. My Airwalk deal didn't exactly work out, and I was living in Carlsbad. I was always a fan of design over everything. Some of the DC shoes, because the team was so young and hip, were being designed so well that they always caught my eye. And being that I was in Carlsbad and I'm lifelong friends with Danny Way and those guys, it was really easy for me just to give a call and get some shoes. So I figured I'd put in some work, and if anything was gonna come of it, it would come of it naturally. In that part, I'm actually skating in some Danny Way shoes, some Rudy Johnson shoes. I'm skating in some boxers. That's what they call them, boxers. But DC, yeah, they used to give me shoes. I could get whatever I wanted to. I could come through and grab some stuff. So sometimes it's a little bit more difficult for guys who are just like putting in work, but not the best to get on a team. So I never got on DC, but I was flowed stuff by them, and those guys were a bunch of my friends, and I'm very appreciative that they took care of me. Those shoes skated great, and honestly, my rhythm part is one of my favorite parts I ever had, and those shoes had a lot to do with it. Other question, you always rocked proper shoes. I was hyped that you also skated non-skate shoes at the time. I answered it in the question before a little bit about those non-skate shoes. When you're a pro skater, every time you put on a pair of shoes, someone comes over to you and is like, hey, do you ride for them now? And it's a really awkward question to answer, whether you ride for somebody or not ride for somebody. If you don't ride for somebody, why you don't ride for somebody. You're just as good as this guy, you're better than that guy, you'll never get on that team. It's just really awkward, and when you're skating, you just want to skate. And when you see something you appreciate, you just want to appreciate, get it and throw it on. I'm OCD, and the aesthetic of my entire fit has a lot to do with my skate session. I need to feel one with my board, my outfit, what I'm skating. If I'm gonna shoot a photo, sometimes I'll wear colors that are complementary to the spot or will pop off the spot. I grew up looking at these photos that impacted me forever, of like Nadas Kappas and Eric Dressen and Mark Gonzalez and Mike Valley and Christian Hosoi, and the photos looked like they were curated. They were so perfect. Maybe one day I'll do a real talk just on some of these photos that impacted me. In my professional career, I really wanted to create images that would stand out like that with my photographs. So the shoes, the clothes, the board, the spot, the lighting, everything has something to do with it. That's really one of the reasons why I was really picky about what shoes I was in. I grew up in New York. In New York, there's a lot of cars and there's a lot of walking. So if you're not in a fresh car, you're probably gonna be in a pair of fresh kicks because you spend a lot of time walking. And I think shoes are the walker's car. That makes sense. That 50 through the knob has to be a good story. What made you realize you could do it? Off the rip, we're skaters, so we're rebels. We believe we can just do whatever we want, whenever we want to do it. I actually needed a couple handrail tricks for my part. I went downtown to skate that rail because it wasn't too big, but it wasn't too small, and I wanted to try, you know, maybe some harder tricks on it. And when I got there, it had a knob at the end. And I was so upset that I think it was more so anger than anything else. But I also grew up skating in New York City. And in New York City, skateboarding wasn't about really going to the perfect spot to do the best thing you could possibly do. It was more so about moving through the city and adapting into whatever you run into. So that was kind of like my essence. And when I got down to San Diego and I saw that knob at the end, I was like, oh well, I guess we skating right through this knob, or we're coming off before the knob, or we ollieing up over the knob. So it started with a no slide fakie, and then the tail slide and a front board slide, and the 50-50 was a little bit challenging because the rail was a little bit taller, and to be able to get on there and be solid enough to ollie off over the end was kind of difficult. We're a product of our environment. Played football, I was a quarterback. In basketball, I was a guard. When I played tennis, I was a singles player. The romance with skateboarding, it was just me and the board, and me being the boss, and just letting that thing know what we're gonna try and do. And sometimes that thing works for me and sometimes it doesn't. I think that energy is really the dynamic that makes the person skate the way they do. So when I saw that, I was going, oh cool, some may look at that as an obstacle. I looked at it as an opportunity. And it was super cool. Years before that, if you go back a real talk or two, is my Planet Earth part. We were having a contest in St. Petersburg. It was a pro contest. I wasn't in the contest. I was just supporting Mike Valley, and I was there. And the hotel was directly across from this little double set. And believe it or not, even when we were at contests back then, we would go scour the city because we were so into skateboarding, and it was so pure, and there was just no cameras around, but we didn't know if we were ever going to be back in St. Petersburg again. So we would just scavenger through the city just to find stuff to skate. And directly behind our hotel was that double set. And after we were ollieing the double set a couple times, doing some ollie grabs and doing some basic stuff, I noticed the second rail, and I was like, man, I think I can ollie high enough to gap onto that second rail. So again, the same essence that raised me skating in New York City, adapting into whatever I ran into, is what made me see the possibility to gap to a handrail, and that was the first gap to handrail. And then many years later, those same core values are what makes me look at a knob rail and I'm going, huh, I got this. So that's the short story long for the knob story. And then you had one more question. It said, any good Ty stories from filming with him? Ty Evans is phenomenal. And our story is so long and so big, I could do a whole episode of it, but I'll give you one glimmer into kind of dynamic between us. Rest in peace to Mike Ternasky. When I met Mike Ternasky told me I reminded him of a younger version of himself, which was kind of interesting. And I didn't really understand what that meant at the time. As I grew older and became more involved with the industry and could appreciate his body of work more, I started to notice what it was. And Mike Ternasky was that kind of go get it, make it happen, no matter what kind of guy. And his team around him was the same way. So when I started working in the industry with Planet Earth and then later on rhythm and audio, I took that same approach. There was no way that I was gonna let anything stop us. Whether we had to bolt cut something, lay down some runway, light something up. For the famous video, we traveled all of Europe with 100-pound lights, and there had never been lit up spots like that in Europe. But I found these like plug-in lights that when you unplug them, they maintain a charge for a couple hours and they roll on wheels. So we took like 100-pound lights to Europe with us. So when I started working with Ty Evans, I asked Jeff Taylor who filmed his part. He said his friend that was skating and wanted to do it but hurt his knee. So now he's getting into filming. So I asked him to bring Ty down. I gave Ty some camera equipment. We started shooting the silver video. Ty had a Super 8 camera already because he wanted to be a filmmaker, and we started creating long ago before he was Ty Evans. So it was an amazing experience to make that first video together, and then the second video with him, Rhythm. And then just from being around in the trenches all the time, we kind of like develop a lot of the same work ethics. And he's somebody like Spanish Mike who him and I communicate Bluetooth. And it's so amazing to see where Ty's gone with filmmaking. One of the most interesting stories about Ty and I is that he is the new definition of the No Excuse Mobile session. He's carrying that same torch that maybe Mike Ternasky passed on to me and a bunch of other people, and I passed on to Ty and a bunch of other people, and it's an infectious work ethic. He makes you believe that you can accomplish something that maybe you have doubts. And I used to always say that about going out with Ty and Atiba, was that I knew something great was gonna happen. A lot of my greatest clips, photos, was on session, on mission with both of those guys, because when you're around greatness, it usually brings greatness out of people. We'll probably address Ty more in this vlog. We're close friends, and unfortunately, I don't get to spend enough time with him on the streets, whether it's creating films or creating opportunities for people, hopefully just creating culture for skateboarding, because we're both so passionate about it. Thank you for those questions. Last question. What up, Henry? Love the videos, Felix. Could you do a video talking about your history in the skate industry from the business end? The companies you've owned and been involved with, etc. Thank you, brother. This could go on forever. And I'm already at 21 minutes and I feel kind of bad for my wife because she has to edit this. I just talk into a camera, she edits it. That's the deal we have for this vlog. So hey, I'm gonna try and do a brief overview. Started skating, had no idea about the industry, didn't even know there was an industry. Met some people who knew about the industry. They started taking me around to contests. From taking me around to contests, I found out that I was actually okay, and I won a contest and I got sponsored by Shut. That was my first exposure to the industry. When I visited Shut was in a basement in Mott Street, and they were doing a lot of their own screening, cutting, and distributing. So we would screen, cut boards, and spray them and skate them over to stores, and it was like the grassroots of all grassroots. So it was beautiful to be exposed to the industry at the bare bones, beginning essence, so pure. Thank you so much, Rod and Bruno, for believing in me and letting me be a part of Shut. It still defines a lot of who I am today. I passed up on a couple offers to ride for some mainstream companies because I thought it was the same thing. Then I noticed I needed a change because I kept breaking Shut boards and my career was demanding more than Shut could provide. So I got an opportunity to ride for World Industries. World Industries at the time was a startup brand, but Mike Valley knew me from the New York, New Jersey area, and he asked me and Chris Pastris, Dune, to ride for World Industries. So I was around World Industries when it first started up, one of the first 6 riders or so on the company, and I watched World Industries start from SMA World Industries, where Steve Rocco was staying on a couch just like that at Nautis's house, to turn into this massive mainstream company. And that was my first exposure with making a video, marketing of a brand, shooting ads, and watching a brand really bubble and grow into that larger stage. I turned pro, I did good at a pro contest. There was some tension between Mike Valley and Steve Rocco at World Industries, and since I was kind of like Team Mike, we were being put a little bit on the back burner, or I was living in Miami, so I had to make a choice whether I was going to stay on World Industries because I had just done good in this pro contest. I had gotten 6th place and some people were interested in me. Well, I got a phone call thanks to Mike Ternasky, Brian Lottie, to ride for Planet Earth, because Planet Earth at the time was underneath the H Street umbrella, and it was Chris Miller's brand that Tony Magnuson and Mike Ternasky were doing with him. During that time, I had a conversation with Andy Howe about riding for New Deal. I had gotten a call from Jovante about possibly riding for Real, and it would have been really interesting if I would have took the choice of riding for Real or New Deal, what could have taken place. But when Chris Miller called my house and I answered the phone and it was Chris Miller, I freaked out because he was one of my favorite skaters. He looks like syrup on pancakes when he's like in a bowl or on a ramp. And his power and style was just so incredible that when I was talking to this man on the phone, there was absolutely no way I wasn't going to ride for his company. And I was always a very involved team rider, doing graphics and videos and all that stuff to try and stay relevant while I was on the East Coast and they were on the West Coast. But it got to a point where Chris Miller broke off from H Street and was going to do the company by himself, and he needed some extra support. So in '93, I moved from Miami to the West Coast, and I worked in an office not too much bigger than this, where 4 of us had to alternate phone calls to be able to do our work. I was working in like marketing and creative, same as I am right now, marketing and creative and team type direction with the brand Planet Earth. And that got me involved with actually producing stuff on a mainstream level, because I was just seeing it happen at World. I was actually doing it hands-on at Shut, So I had a good foundation. At Planet Earth was where I really got involved, and for the first couple of years there, I just helped Chris with his vision and his brand to build the team, but I always had more of an urban vision, more of a streetwear vision. So I started Rhythm in 1994, and Rhythm was the first company that had like athletic wears and appliques and nylons, even before DC, which was really interesting. And then after Rhythm, we shortly started Audio. So here I am starting all these companies and playing such a crucial part of it. Chris Miller blessed me with shares in the overall operation. So I was owners in Killer Distribution, which was Planet Earth, Tornado, Mercury, Rhythm, Audio. And that was my first ownership of anything. And the way I kind of took ownership of it was sweatkity. I think that's what you call it. When you just put in so much work that someone has to honor your work in some way. And that is so honorable, because really, we used all the money we had. We actually used the money we didn't have. We borrowed money from the banks. We actually borrowed money from our family. My father gave me a whole bunch of money. And then finally, we couldn't support the amount of sales that was being demanded from us, and we had to bring in a partner. So when we brought in a partner, it was K2, and K2 took ownership of the entire umbrella and kept us on in key positions. That was super shocking. But as skateboarders turned businessmen, we had some lessons to learn. And that was a very, very tough one. To give your whole life to one thing, to then have to hand it off to somebody else, was so difficult, because eventually they act like you're going to be able to run it as you are, but they are the big business. They are the money bags behind it. And however they want it to run indefinitely, they will impose on you, or you have to walk. So as they began to impose on us the way they wanted the company to be ran, I said enough was enough. And I moved to LA. I moved to LA because I was going up to LA a whole bunch for like entertainment stuff, and I figured I could live in LA and go down to San Diego occasionally. And then eventually I just pretty much stopped going to San Diego, and I was just in LA. And before anything worked out with another brand, I had this vision to start a brand called Ammo. My brand before that was called Rhythm, and the idea of rhythm is when anything is working good in the world, it has a rhythm, it has a flow, it has a feeling. So the idea with Ammo was not boom, boom, shoot 'em up, although that's obvious, and I could have gone the ghetto urban route, really aggressive and negative. The idea with Ammo is really, we all have ammo, whether it's your mouth, or whether you're just like painting or instruments to an artist, a camera to a cameraman. So the ideas for the brands I create are always bigger than just a brand or a label or a word. It's always something that has an essence, a why. You always need to begin with why. And while I was getting it together as a clothing company, streetwear brand, I got this offer to ride for Shut. And I said to myself, man, could this be it? Like my career full circle, I started riding for Shut. Shut is relaunched. They want me to be one of the founding riders, and I ride for Shut for a couple of years. I have a pro board for Shut. It was an amazing time. Do some graphics and almost have some closure in my career where I'm able to honor the first person who gave me a jump start. Shut is still in existence right now at whatever level they're at. It's a very difficult time in the industry for board brands, but I still had that thing inside of me where I wanted to do something greater. And then I took Ammo from concept to product. So I left Shut and I started Ammo. With Ammo, my first intention was to just make products. I just wanted to make cool products, not a hardcore skate company, not opposed to being a hardcore skate company. It was just supposed to be products. It wasn't gonna have a team. It was just gonna be a home for whatever my ideas were. I was helping Manny Santiago at the time with some stuff through Famous, and he wanted to ride for Ammo. And after saying no the first time, he asked me again to ride for Ammo, and his position was that he would be nowhere in skating if it wasn't for me, that he wanted to do Ammo with me. It was really hard to deny that kind of heartfelt pitch or just feeling behind wanting to be a part of this and to bring something to fruition. So we went for it, and we started doing Ammo, and Ammo shortly became a lot like a typical board brand. Again, there's nothing wrong with a typical board brand, but a typical board brand doesn't make a lot of money and takes a lot of work. You have to do a lot of road work, you have to have a lot of time, you have to have some distribution behind you, and we did it as long as we could out of my house with no distribution, with no sales team, with no support, nothing but an info button and a lot of marketing and just hard work on our part. And I'm so happy to see that Javier Nunez and Manny and Diego Najera and Johnny Hernandez, Kelvin Hoffler, Spanish Mike, Joe Kralik are all doing phenomenal. Because the one thing you have to know is you don't raise your kids to stay home. Not that any of those guys are kids, but whatever work you put in should yield a greater work on the back end. Although ammo currently is not around as an active board brand or active streetwear brand, the mentality behind ammo still exists within my heart and within my mind, and I still use my ammo daily to be able to produce stuff, whether it's opportunity for somebody or create these videos. And it may come back in its original form where it's just an idea house, where this brand collects ideas of people and executes them, whether it be in products or film or whatever. Some of the early ammo interviews was with Dante Ross and Giovanni Retta, and Dante Ross talked about how his ammo was his eyes and ears, because he's an A&R and he creates beats and he creates opportunities for artists to make music. And Giovanni Retta spoke about his camera and how his ammo was his camera because he loves to shoot photos. So this is already at 30 minutes, and I apologize if that was a little short, but we could talk about this more on another episode because my wife's gonna kill me that I'm giving her a 30-minute episode to edit again. But I wanna thank all you guys for joining me on Real Talk Tuesday. As you see, I'm trying a new angle here to maybe get a little bit better sound, but I still don't think the sound is good enough for a podcast. Any of you guys who are familiar with podcast setups and know how to do this on a podcast level, maybe leave some comments at the bottom. If not, anybody who watches this, leave some questions on the bottom for the following episodes of Real Talk Tuesday. I love doing this, but I can't do it by myself because a community is not one person, but a group of people who have one common denominator, and we love to create here, we love to skate here, and we love healthy living, whether it be mind, body, or soul. So thanks again for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for all the likes and comments. Please share. Let's grow this community together, and I'll see you guys tomorrow on another video or next week on the next Real Talk Tuesday.